Again, to introduce myself, I am Pamela Netinho, the English Language Fellow in Bogota. I'm at Centro Colombo Americano.
And I'm Lida Rojas, an English teacher at Centro Colombo Americano in Bogota.
So together, we're going to try to give you some ready-to-go activities for the English language classroom. So the focus of today's webinar is ready-to-go activities. Of course, as a teacher, you are designing instructional lesson plans for your classes. However, what often happens during instruction or a task that you thought in your plans was going to take 20 minutes for the students to do or complete, takes them only 10 or 15 minutes. And then you're left with 5 or 8 minutes in class with nothing planned. And this happens to all teachers occasionally, even the most experienced. But every teacher must use instructional time to its fullest. Sometimes this is often referred to as teaching from bell, which is starting class promptly at the beginning of class, and then bell to bell, meaning the end of class, ending with the bell. So it's kind of a term, bell to bell. Every teacher needs a few of what I call filler activities, and that continue the learning but take little to no planning. These are activities and ideas that the teacher has kind of just stored in their personal bank of strategies in his or her head to use as needed and when needed. Some can take minutes, others take more time. Usually these activities, these little filler activities, depend a lot on the creativity of the teacher. It's the teacher implementing short, easy-to-do activities to fully use instructional time from bell to bell. So that's really kind of our look at for today. Can we go to the next slide, please? Our learning objective for today is for you to be introduced to listening, speaking, reading, and writing activities that take little to no advanced preparation and can be easily implemented into the ESL classroom. What we really want is to share with you some of these short kind of filler activities that you can take with you, or just strategies to implement into your instruction plans that don't take much as far as materials or advanced preparation. It's just kind of you kind of having these things either in your head or either on hand. Next slide, please. Having taught for many years, I've come across excellent books for teachers with very doable strategies, and unfortunately, I've had those also come across books that really only work if you've got a class of 15. But I know that many of you are teaching large classes. Months ago, I came across this book, Zero Prep for Beginners. It includes ready-to-go activities for the language classroom. I've listed the source there as well. The authors, Laurel Pollard, Natalie Hess, and Jan Heron, are all very experienced ESL teachers. They share how for years each taught ESL at the intermediate and advanced levels. And at intermediate and advanced levels can be challenging, but there is already some of that L2 in the student's knowledge. So suddenly, when they were given beginning level students, they had very new and very different challenges. And so this book is really a compilation of strategies and activities that they developed and used when teaching beginning ESL students. We'll be using, next slide please. So this book, Zero Prep for Beginners, the company is actually located in California, but they do have a website, altaenglishpublishers.com. Not all our activities will be from this text, but many of them will be. Just a note, if any of those of you viewing are at binational centers in Colombia, a copy of this book, Zero Prep for Beginners, has been binational center. So you can ask for it there. And again, as I mentioned, we will have activities from that text, and if we do, we'll complete the page, but we have some other short activities to share with you, of course, as well. So let's begin with some of the activities, these ready-to-go activities for you to use in your classroom. The first one we have to present is called all the words we know for the first day of class. The teacher says to the students, we're going to be learning many new words, new English words, but you probably already know a lot of English words. You probably know okay. You probably know television, McDonald's, hamburger, and there's probably even more. So the teacher gets the students into small groups. And the students write down as a group on one sheet of paper all the words that they know or that they think they know that are English words. And so the teacher gives them time to complete the list. And then it's time for sharing the words. So a volunteer from one group reads out one word. If the students in the other groups have that word on their paper, they cross out the word. The teacher writes that word on the board. Another group, then you move to another group. A student in that group reads out an English word that they already know, and everyone in the class, if they have that on their list, they cross out the word. The teacher writes that word on the board. So the teacher is building a list of words the students know. The activity continues until all the words are on the board. And then the teacher and the class review the words orally, and then the words should be read orally by the students. Now, if your students, your beginning students, are very low beginners, and you feel that they really don't have any background knowledge as far as English, you might want to try this activity just by what words do they know by hearing the words. They recognize them as far as listening. And then you as a teacher could write television on the board. You could write McDonald's on the board because they don't have the spelling knowledge even though they know the word. Okay? So that's a great activity, all the words we know for the first day of class. Next slide, please. This particular activity is called Disappearing Vocabulary. When it says the page number, that means that it's from the text Zero Prep for Beginners. This is kind of a challenging and fun activity. It's great for reviewing vocabulary. It gives students plenty of practice saying new words and seeing how they are spelled while they try to remember words that become disappearing words. All right? Here's the way it works. Basically, the teacher initially writes a list of words on the board that the students should already know. So this is review vocabulary. The teacher points to the word and says it. The students repeat the word. So the teacher goes down the list saying the word, and the students repeat it. Then it's read again, a little faster. Okay? The teacher will continue pointing to the words, but on some words, the teacher should not speak the words. Let the students say the word without the teacher modeling it for them. So you go through this list of words again and again and again, but you, the teacher, are saying fewer words each time and letting the students chorally read the words together. You've gone through the entire list, and you're going to go through this list several times. But at one point, maybe you've gone through the list 3-4 times, you're going to point to a word, you say it with the class, but you're going to erase the word from the list and have the students say it. You've just made that word disappear. The first time you do this, the students are going to be kind of surprised and shocked because they're not used to having a teacher erase a word from a word list. So you're going to keep going through the list several more times. You're going to erase another word from time to time. But you're still going to point to every empty space and ask the students what was the word that was there. You have to keep the pace on this pretty quick because it's big. Again, it's a vocabulary review activity. By the end of the activity, all the words are erased from the board. So maybe you had a dozen words up there and now they're blank. Hopefully, however, the students have memorized the word list. And now they're able to call out the words on their own as you're pointing to blank spaces on the board. So then when all the words are gone and the students you think can read all the words because they've essentially memorized the words you put on the board, you're going to invite 2 or 3 students to come up to the board. And as their classmates call out the words, the students are going to write the words correctly spelled on the board in the correct order, in the original order as you wrote them. Now, if a student at the board does not spell the word correctly, then the students should tell the student, no, it's spelled wrong, and then spell it correctly for them. What you want at the end is that whole list that you originally put up with words correctly spelled. So the list is there again. And that's the activity called Disappearing Vocabulary. That could be a great filler activity when you just have a few minutes in class, and it's a way to practice vocabulary, either for that day or vocabulary that was learned in previous lessons.
Next slide, please. Okay, the activity I'm going to talk about is fashion show, right? It is important to know that this activity needs to be announced before in class, because students need to bring some clothes, pieces of clothes and some accessories that they will wear that day or the day of the activity. So the teacher will also divide the class in two groups, because they need to decide what style they will be. So next slide, please. So as we can see in the pictures, they have to decide if they want to be elegant or casual. So depending on the style they picked, they have to bring some, as I said, or as I mentioned before, some pieces of clothes or accessories. Yeah. The day of the activity, they should be working in pairs. They will be asking questions about what people are wearing that in that moment, right? So they will be asking, for example, what is she wearing, or what is, I don't know, Mary wearing? And the students, they will answer like using the vocabulary they know about the clothes they are like wearing at the moment. So apart from the vocabulary they are like using, the vocabulary about clothes they are using, they can also include the use of adjectives, colors, and maybe materials. But it depends on what the teacher wants from the exercise, and of course from the level the students are and the vocabulary they already know. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, the other activity I'm going to talk to you about is called Finding Out Differences. To develop these activities, it's necessary to find some special images, like for the one I'm going to show you. Next slide, please. As you can see, you have two similar images, and the idea is that they have to find out like some differences between them. So these kind of images can be found online. There are many websites you can visit in order like to choose the one you prefer or the one that is more appropriate for your class, right? So in this case, what I would like to exercise is the use of is there and are there, and the use of present continuous, asking for like some activities people and animals are doing at the moment. So students can be working in pairs, and they can ask questions like, for example, is there a sheep behind the girl? So it could be like yes or no answer. And they can also use, as I mentioned before, present continuous in order to ask what people are wearing. Like, for example, is the girl wearing a dress? So yes, no answer again. So if the teacher wants to expand, or the students expand more like the information or answers, they can say, for example, no, the girl, yes, the girl is wearing a dress and she's also holding a bucket, for example, depending on the vocabulary they have. Okay, so the next slide, please. Well, the next activity is called My Childhood. In this one, students will be exploring the use of past tense. Next slide, please. So, as you can notice, in this activity, I'm fostering the use of a graphic organizer. They are also using like some keywords and visuals. I like to work with visuals because I do consider that they recall more vocabulary when they can see what they are talking about. So the idea is that they have to prepare this kind of graphic organizer in advance, so they can use, they can draw the images they want, or they can use like some magazine clippings in order to complete their mind maps. So the idea is that they will be sharing with a partner the information they have there. So, for example, they could say, when I was a child, I liked to study a lot. Yeah. So, in order to expand, the students can be asking questions in order to get extra information. Like, for example, what was your favorite subject? So they can, of course, continue or keeping a conversation going depending on the questions they ask. Next slide, please.
Teaching songs to beginning learners works wonderfully in the ESL classroom. Songs have built-in repetition, they have TPR movement, or the teacher has actions and gestures that he or she creates to go along with the song. The Hokey Pokey is a song with TPR that actually works with all ages. You're teaching body parts, and you're also teaching the concepts of left and right. I strongly suggest that all of you go to the website, americanenglish.state.gov. And you will there find you can search for Sing Out Loud Children's Songs. And on this particular CD, you will find Hokey Pokey. This is actually the cover of the CD. But on the site, you can find all 12 songs that are on the CD in MP3 format. You'll also find the lyrics there, and there's actually a packet that you can download. It's actually quite lengthy for each song, where it has planned activities for listening, speaking, reading, and writing for every song that's on that specific CD. But you can actually then get the Hokey Pokey to use in your class as an activity. I also invite you to explore americanenglish.state.gov, and when you get to the main homepage of the website, go to the search box, and in the search box, type A-Z list of publications. Again, A-Z, essentially it's A to Z, like the alphabet, list of publications. And I think you're going to be pretty amazed as far as what comes up. There are a multitude of resources that you can use as an English teacher. Next slide, please. But now for an activity, let's look at, once you've taught the basic Hokey Pokey, now is the time where you can do some additions. And so you can really ham it up and act a little silly. And again, it can be that kind of filler activity, that quick 5, 8, 10-minute activity that you do with students so that you're teaching from bell to bell. And so what you're going to have students do is they're going to add to the song. For example, there's the basic Hokey Pokey. Put your right hand in, left hand, then foot, and then your whole self, and so on. But you could extend it and have students put their right elbow in and their left elbow in. Maybe they want to put their belly in. Maybe they want to put their right knee or their left knee. And so what you're doing is you're extending on the song. Students can do shoulders. They could do their eyes, on and on and on, just naming additional parts of the body. You can invite a student to lead the singing and the action. So this student decides what part of the body to add on to the song, to include in the song, in addition to the verses that are already given that you can find on the American English website. This student then invites another student, and the song is sung by the class. And then they invite another student. So you're singing the song over and over, but with additions. You can continue the song within your time limit. Remember, this kind of activity can be a 5 to 7 minute filler activity. Just play it as long until you notice the students are losing interest. End the song with the traditional, put your whole self in, take your whole self out, that's the classic ending. Here's a note. If you can't or you don't want to sing, just do the lyrics as a chant. Also, the directions will say everybody get in a circle, but often this is just not physically possible in a classroom, depending on the size of your room and the size of your class. So I've taught this song many times, never having students get in a circle. I have students just face the front of the classroom, and they step forward for their whole self in, and then they step back for their whole self out. Just keep it simple. There's no need to tell students that this was really designed to be in a circle if you can't do that in your classroom, but you can still teach the song and the lyrics. Next slide, please. Wallet Talk is an activity from Zero Prep for Beginners. And in this particular activity, students are going to share a little bit about themselves with their classmates. For low beginners, they can still produce some good vocabulary. Students will be in groups, so students can always get assistance from others in their groups. And it really builds listening, speaking, and vocabulary. So basically, the teacher talks with the class about wallets, about purses and book bags, and backpacks, anything people use to carry items. And the teacher then asks the students to find something interesting or unique to share that's in their wallets or purse or backpack right now in class. It could be a photograph, a picture. It could be a coin. It could be a good luck charm. It could be a pair of sunglasses. I mean, there are multiple things. Maybe a girl just got a new color lipstick. Warn students that they will have to share with the class about whatever they choose. Now, if the class is small, this can be done as a whole class. But if you have a large class, then I suggest strongly that you put students into groups of 4, 5, even 6, so that you get more conversation and more discussion with the smaller group. Ask each student to share their item that they have selected to the others in the group and tell everything that they know about it. Others in the group can ask those people questions. So it can just go on and on like this. Now, if you wanted to extend the activity, after the students have shared, the teacher should actually probably encourage recycling of vocabulary. So the teacher might want to step in and say, whose picture is this? And then the student has to answer. Or asks the student, who is in this picture? So the student who has that picture has to explain, this is my grandmother and my grandfather and whoever's in the picture. So you are actually extending and encouraging additional conversation. There's even another extension you could do with students, and this is more like a homework assignment, is after you've done the Wallet Talk activity in class, you could ask students to bring in something that they would like to share about with others in the class. And you could always warn them, you don't have to prepare a speech. You don't want a speech. Just tell them to bring in something that, again, in groups that they might want to share with others, might be of interest to others, and then they would like to talk about with others.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and this activity is called Famous People Role Play. In this activity, students will act the role of a famous person, singer or actor or maybe an artist. So next slide, please. So this will be a pair work. In the one we will have student A and student B. As you can see, students will need a format. In the one, they have like some information about the artist they are representing. As you can see in the first column, we have like the complete information. So this is the information they have to give to their partners in order to complete their partners, like let's say like the column they have to complete. So as you can see in this case, I chose 2 actors. The first one is Sarah Jessica Parker. She is from the movie Sex and the City. And the other one is Robert Pattinson from the movie Twilight. Right? Next slide, please. Well, as you can see, this is like the image of the second column. These are the questions students need to ask in order to complete the information. So as you can see, we have first name, middle name, favorite music, friend's name, and email. So it'll be, or I do consider it's important for the teacher to model like the questions students can use in order to get like the information. So for example, they can use, who are you? So the person will answer like, I'm Mrs. Parker. What's your first name? My name, or my first name is Sarah. So as it'll be like kind of difficult for some people to write in the names they mention because they don't know them. It'll be nice for them to use the question about spelling. Yeah? So how do you spell that? How do you spell it? In order to practice or review the alphabet. This activity, it's like very nice for students. They really like to do it, and they enjoy like representing famous people. Next slide, please. Okay, the next activity is called drawing or talking. Yeah, as its name says, students have to draw a little story that can be real. I mean, they can talk about real experience, or they can like draw something about an anecdote, or maybe a sad moment they lived in the past. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is one of the drawings I did myself. I think that is a good example for students, and it would be nice if they see your own work. I mean, if teachers show them like what they can do, it'll be nice. Like it'll be like motivation for them to draw. So as soon as they are finished with the drawings, they have to exchange papers. So the idea is that they have to come up with a story from their partner's drawings. Yeah. So I'm gonna like give you an example about this story. So in the first picture, for example, we have a little boy was playing with in his father's farm, but he had an accident. Yeah. In picture number 2, we have he kicked his ball so hard that it fell into the water. In picture number 3, we have he was so worried and tried to rescue it, but it was not possible. In picture number 4, he just decided to sit down and cried a lot because he lost a ball that was a gift from his favorite soccer player. So at the end of the stories, the students can compare or can like tell the other partners the real stories in order to find out differences. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, the next activity is going to be about people's ages. So the idea is like to show some famous people again in order to guess their ages. Next slide, please. So in this case, students will be asking questions about, as I said, famous people ages. And they can practice, in this case, for example, the use of plural questions like, how old are they? And well, the answer could be they are 34 and 45 in the first case. Again, student B will be asking questions about the image he has or she has. But it would be nice if they know people they are talking about. If they don't really know the names of the people they are talking about, they can ask the teacher or maybe their partners know. So it'll be like a way to expand, let's say, with questions. Next slide, please. Okay. In the second images, as you can see, there's only one like person per student, so they can like practice the use of questions in like singular way, right? Like how old is he? So he's 53, and how old is she? She is 42. Okay. So next slide, please.
This particular activity is called the dates game, and this game really encourages listening and speaking among students. It also allows students to get to know each other. As mentioned in the Classroom Management Basics webinar that I did in April, you really want to include activities in your classroom so students get to know each other, because it's in these types of activities, these get-to-know activities, that students learn about each other and that you build community within your classroom. And this dates game is an activity that definitely does that as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to put students in groups of 4. Now, if you have 3 or 5 in a group, then I suggest you as a teacher go to the group and you will have to modify the directions for them. Just with that group, do a little one-on-one to change the directions up a little bit. So what you're going to do first of all is you're going to have the students make a game board, and so you're going to give the students a sheet of paper. And they're going to fold one sheet of paper. This is one paper per group of 4 students. So they're going to fold the paper 4 times, in half, and half, and half, and half, so that they have 16 squares. And what I like about this game is that you can really use any sheet of paper. In fact, if you look at the photo here, but there's actually writing on the back. I just found a piece of paper that I wanted to recycle, I wanted to reuse. So there's actually something written on the back, but you can't tell to play the game. So you're going to have the students put start in the bottom left-hand corner and put finish in the top left-hand corner. But again, you're going to keep 16 squares. So you're just writing that in a small space as demonstrated there. Again, if you take a look at the photo, you see what the setup of the game is. Each student in that group must think about 4 important numbers in his or her life. So maybe they think of a birthday, and maybe it's the year they were born. Maybe it's the number of brothers and sisters they have. But they have to come up, each student, with 4 numbers. Each student writes those 4 numbers in any 4 squares, and don't have the students write in sequence. You can see the way they're kind of scattered. They do not share with the class yet why they wrote the numbers. So the students just write the 4 numbers in any 4 boxes. If you notice here, I did this in colors so you can see how they're scattered. For instance, you see how the blue numbers are scattered, not all in sequence. The brown numbers are scattered. The blue numbers are scattered. The green numbers are scattered. You don't want the students to put their 4 numbers in a row. I use the 4 colors as a demonstration, but usually you're going to see on these game boards, when I've done them with students, they're generally done in pencil. What's going to happen then is students need, once they've made their game board, once they've made what you see, students need to either use a coin, they need a game piece. So they need a coin or something to use. I've had girls use an earring, a ring. Sometimes actually finding a game piece can be a problem, but we're going to address that on the next slide. Each group also needs 1 dice. Let's go back to the other slide, please. All right, thank you. Now, actually, I checked on this because die to me has always been singular and dice was plural. But actually, in modern English dictionaries now, dice is acceptable for 1. Now, what's going to happen is students take turn rolling the dice, and they move their game piece accordingly, just like on the game board. So here, the students would move, starting at start, they move to the right, then they go up, then they move to the left, then they go up, then they move to the right, then they go up, and then they go to the left. So it's kind of a jigsaw kind of pattern. When someone lands on another student's number, that student whose number the person landed on must explain the importance of that date, that number in their life. And the group members can ask additional questions about the number. So what you're doing is you're developing sharing and you're developing discussion. And the game continues until everybody gets across the finish line. You, the teacher, you need to walk around the room and you're really going to observe how discussions develop, and you're going to find that you're going to be learning additional information about your students as you overhear the conversations going on in the group. Next slide, please. Okay, now, as an alternative to dice, you can use get a 6-sided pencil and number it. As I mentioned before, I use discarded paper. So find and keep paper, copier machine on one side, but it's been discarded. Just be sure there's nothing private or confidential on the other side, because students should not have access to any private or confidential information. So make sure it's paper that you can recycle and reuse, and it's okay to do so. Sometimes dice are difficult to find, or students don't have something for a game piece. So the reality is, teachers are always looking and collecting stuff. So, as an alternative to dice, use a 6-sided pencil. With a permanent marker, label each side 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And when you roll the pencil, a number will appear just as it would on a dice. Now, from working with adults, I've learned that there are phone apps that produce a dice that can be rolled, so to speak. But be careful when doing this with students. Many students that we work with buy minutes for their phones, and that money's for family communication. It's not to be used for games. So the pencils work just as well. And for game pieces, I've been collecting plastic bottle tops, and I store them in a plastic bag. They might be different colors, but you know what? To make it easier for students, I still number the tops with a number on the top, and it doesn't matter which number students get, which color they get, they've got a game piece. If any are lost, it's not a big issue. I just collect more, and you can collect 50 if you have a class size of 50. Next slide, please. This game is actually from Zero Prep for Beginners, and this activity is just fun because it's numbers. It's not words. And so those two students who like math will just have a little bit of a change, having to practice numbers in English rather than working with words. And so what you do as a teacher is you put a 2-digit number on the board. So you put on the board 14. And then you write the equation, blank plus blank equals 14. And now what you're going to do is you get students to do the arithmetic. So when you put that on the board, you want the blank plus blank equals 14. You want the students to come up with as many combinations, equations, as they can that equal 14. So for instance, the students come up with 10 plus 4, or 7 plus 7, or 6 plus 8. I mean, it goes on and on. You could have students do this individually, or you could work it with small groups. It depends how you want to handle it, maybe at the time you have as well. Then what you're going to do is you stop. You're going to give students time to come up with as many equations that equal 14 as they can. Stop when you've noticed that most students have finished. Call on a student to read any one number combination on his or her list. So the student must dictate to you the combination. Students who have that combination on their paper, cross it out. And you continue with students sharing different combinations that equal 14 until all of the combinations have been read that students did. Now, if there's someone left with a combination that no one else wrote down, then that student's kind of declared the winner. You could do this over and over and over with several different equations and repeat with different activities. Now, even though this is shown with addition, you could do this with subtraction, and you could be doing it with multiplication and division. In fact, be ready to use more complex numbers and other operations as soon as your students are ready for more of a challenge.
Next slide, please. Well, this activity was taken from the book we mentioned at the beginning, Zero Prep. So in this activity, the teacher will have two groups. They must stand in a circle. One group will be the inner circle, and the second group will be the outer circle. Both groups are going to have like a special role. The teacher can decide, for example, that the inner circle are the listeners, and the outer circle group will be the speakers. So the idea is that they have to tell the story or some information to the partner they are facing, just as you see in the image. So they are facing a partner, so they have to tell the story. It can be a 30-minute story or maybe a minute story. So the story or the grammar they are going to use or the vocabulary they are going to use in the story depends on what the teacher wants and the level of the students, of course. So the idea is that they will like move one position to the left when they finished, and they will tell the same information to the new partner they are facing. So they can rotate many times depending on what the teacher wants. So at the end, they have been, or they could like end up talking with like many students, so all of them know the stories. So the teacher can change or ask them to change roles depending on the time they have for the activity. So they will change roles. So the other ones will be speakers and the other ones will be listeners. That's it.
Next slide, please. What we know, this is also from the book, Zero Prep for Beginners, and this activity is to get students thinking about vocabulary. And so the teacher asks a question. What do we know about and the teacher fills in what the topic is. And so as students call words related to the topic, the teacher writes them on the board. So you're really trying to generate vocabulary. What do the students know? For example, maybe it's a Friday afternoon and the teacher says to the students, what do we know about weekends? And the students generate words having to do with maybe activities or even just Saturday and Sunday. Or what do we know about the weather? And words are generated by the students. So basically it's the teacher creates a question to then have the students generate vocabulary related to the topic. You can stop right there, just as kind of a quick review of vocabulary. Or you have some other ideas. Maybe once the words are generated, you ask the students to sort the words into nouns and verbs and adjectives, etc. Maybe you want the students to take the words and write them into sentences. If your students make vocabulary cards or maintain a vocabulary list, have them add the words that they are missing to their personal lists. You could even use this as a way to activate prior knowledge before you teach other words related to the topic.
Next slide, please.
Taking surveys is a great way to have students mingle while completing a survey that promotes both fluency and allows students to get to know each other. And surveys generate a lot of useful words because the content comes from the students' lives. This is shown as a sample, but you, the teacher, can determine the categories you want to create. So you draw the table on the board and you have the students copy the chart. If your class is small, you might want to list all the students' names, but if it's large, just tell the students to write the name of each person they meet and talk with. Explain any unknown words to the students, model, practice orally and individually phrases like, what is your favorite food? What is your favorite color? Who is your favorite person? And continue practicing these questions for a while before they start to mingle. So when the students mingle, they are basically interviewing their classmates. Ideally, they should ask each partner only one question, write the answer, and then move on to another student. The idea is to get the students to mingle, not stand with one person for 5 minutes. They may, however, return to a student for another question at a later time. You, the teacher, must walk around the room helping with vocabulary and encouraging the students to ask a complete question. Continue as long as the interest is high. Charts do not need to be completed. When students return to their seats, you, the teacher, ask, who knows Juan's favorite activity? Who knows Carolina's favorite food? Ask volunteers to answer, write some of these words on the board, have students listen, and then work and complete their charts by what they hear as responses. You can do this with taking surveys with any routine. It's up to you, the teacher, decide what you want as the categories. But it's a great mingling and get to know activity.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this activity is called Who Am I? In this case, students will be working with famous people once again. And it is that teachers will prepare some papers with the name of a famous person, or maybe they can give, or the teacher can give a picture to his students. So the idea is that students will be asking questions about a person they have to represent, or, well, they will be given answers about the person they have. So the other students will be asking questions like, if we're talking about basic levels, I recommend you to use like yes/no questions. So of course, it is important for you to prepare like some vocabulary in advance, like adjectives and some physical features. So they start like by asking like, are you a singer? Are you an actor? Are you Colombian? Are you from the United States? So they will be answering questions until the moment they guess who they are. That's the activity.
Next slide, please. All right, at this time, we're actually ready for questions. I have a question, and this is from Gerardo, who's in Peru. Do you recommend having a time at the end of each class to play games, especially if students like them? That would be a way to make classes fun. You know, actually, pedagogically, at the end of class, you should be doing somewhat of a review of what you have done to kind of bring closure to the end of your class. You know, some of the activities we did today, you could use as a starter way to get into class for the day, to get into the content, the objective that you're going to be teaching that day. But generally, as far as doing these, the activities were, you could fill these into your instruction, but I would not say every time you have to end with a game. Okay? Do it as you see fit. And you know what? Variety, kids like variety. So variety is always great for the classroom. I hope that answers your question. Do you have anything, Lida?
About that, well, I do consider that it is important for students like to play in the classroom, but I don't think that it's necessary to do the activities at the end of the class only. I think that is important to mix the grammar like they are using and the vocabulary they are using during the class and make or create a game for them, not necessarily at the end. We have a second question, Raul from Peru. What about a spelling contest? I think that is a really good activity. They like competitions, you know, they enjoy that a lot. But it depends on what you want from your students.
Mm-hmm. As far as spelling can be fun. You can do spelling bees kind of thing in your class, and we're always fun with having oral kinds of funs in your class. That's another activity you could do. Again, if you have 10 minutes, let's do a quick spelling bee and have students up in the front of the room and just see how well they do with the spelling. The visual learners are better spellers than kinesthetic learners. That's generally a fact, so that's something about spelling. But spelling can be a lot of fun, and spelling games, yes, can be a lot of fun. This is from Alida Gomez. One question: children love Disney's princesses, Barbie, Goku, and other action figures toys, trying to replace drawings.
Of course. I consider it depends on the kind of group you have.
Mm-hmm.
If they are adults, teenagers, or children, of course you can change the images.
Right, because I think it's one thing for a 7-year-old to bring in Barbie, but I don't think the 17-year-old. So it's really, again, you know, so often as a teacher, you need to look at your audience. Who are you teaching and what's appropriate? That's why the Hokey Pokey is great for all ages. I have a song that I use called Bluebird, Bluebird through my window, and I only use it with children. All right, it has to do with teaching colors. Okay. It looks like that is the last question we have. I hope you've gotten some ideas, whether they be as filler ideas or just activities that you can put into your instructional lesson design. Just remember, every teacher should be maximizing instructional time. You really need to be teaching from bell to bell. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.